Hello again. So, this is one that I did yesterday. I've already had a few inquiries, so if you want one, give us a shout. I'm putting them on for £100, and which in comparison to the original, which is you'd have to pay me over 10 times that amount, is a bargain. And you can get an idea of the scale. It's A3, best part of, which is over a foot in it's about a foot in width, 16 to 18 inches in height, and in centimetres that's about 30 centimetres across there, so it's about 42 centimetres in height, I'd say. Okay, so the one I'm going to work on for this time period is another version of the same person. This is a friend of mine, April, who may well be watching. Hello, April. Yeah, it's another one that I'm going to do pretty much the same thing. I'm just going to reach across the camera, sorry about this. Get my piece of paper so I don't mark that. Easily happens that, especially when you're working in biro. That with a smeared hand across there that you can use as an ad hoc brush across the entire surface of what you're working on, which is always a bonus to find out later. Yeah, it definitely sharpens the images, giving them a rework here, and it makes them more than a print when I do this as well. I don't know what it makes them into, sort of a feature print, I don't know, what would you call it? I'm sure somebody's got some terminology for it. I'm usually a big advocate of getting the background, as I was saying last time, and then focused entirely on the foreground as I was saying it. Yeah, so this one's called Apophenia, which I think means to attempt to make sense out of shapes that are otherwise nonsensical, or something to that effect. The reason this one is because this is an initial study. This was one of the first console pieces where I used the panotrack sort of approach, where I work things through from both sides of the media that I'm working on, and then reassemble the image using different versions of the same image. Now, I was so pleased with the original that I kept it, which I have a tendency to do with all of these panotrace images that I've done recently. There's usually a standout image, and that one will get saved from the scalpel. one day in the far distant future, when I can afford a laser cutter, I won't even have to use a scalpel. I'll just cut them through with the laser cutter. Everything has to be cut in exactly the same place for them to obviously tessellate back together again and reconform on the portrait, which is what the Apophenia I must have done. Cool, I don't know how many times I've done this version of April, or the last one, into the triple figures, no problem. Especially with this one, I've done lino prints on 2 different scales, gel plate prints, mono prints, all sorts of paintings, oil paintings, watercolour paintings, ink paintings, which is what ostensibly this is underneath, pencil sketches, different versions of them, and then they all get sent through the my imaginative blender. Again, like the ground level one yesterday that I did, retouched the print of. This is on watercolour paper, fresh from the printers again. I do quite like doing it, to be honest with you. I haven't done any drawing for a while. It's been a lot of, well, that's not true. I'm working on I work out a line drawing first, that's how I replicate compositions. And I'm working on a line drawing of somebody who I listen to quite a bit at the moment, who's got their own ideas about art and what art's role in society is. So hopefully you'll see some of that in the future. Not too distant. A person that's interested in multiple perspectives. And one day I will do a video on why I'm fascinated by that, but it always leads to me transgressing and digressing off of the subject matter quite rapidly, which I am prone to do anyway, so while I'm concentrated on this, I think I'll stay clear of suffice to say, I think I can tie it in with painting history, contemporary painting history. Even if it does mean mentioning a few painters that I'm probably not in the same stratosphere as. Well, no, I'm not. these are pretty much the media that I use to, I mean obviously apart from the slapdash ink work over the top of it, or underneath it actually. But the pen, yeah, I use the Graham. I think there might have been a bit of a brown biro that I used that I'm not likely to use in this one. So yeah, these can be done to order, like the last one. Obviously they're not going to be identical. When I say that about them not being, I don't mean to the original, because obviously they're not going to be identical to the original because I've reworked them from that. I mean from one another. If I do more versions and I get orders in, like it appears to be the case with the earlier one that I did yesterday, then yeah, quite happy. I don't even mind, I'll film them if you want. You can have a film of me working on it. I'll try to keep my right arm out of it like I didn't in the last video. Swig of coffee. So I think you can see it's starting to, I'm picking out the details in it and what that does to it. Which is what I'd argue is the benefits of working on something by hand rather than machine making it. What you draw attention to, literally in this case. It's a bit like the difference between a photographed portrait and a painted portrait is the time dilation that's going on within. There's not much time dilation going on within the flat surface of a photograph because it's the shutter length. So even if you have it for a minute and a half, half an hour, 40 minutes, if you're using one of the old antique cameras, then comparatively speaking it's a lot longer time that you're looking at that is condensed and suppressed into the image when an artist has tried to paint it by hand. And it's the implication of attention. What the artist is drawing your eye to. I'm going to go off into one of my penetrate conversations here if I'm not careful. David Hockney remarks on this that with modern photography, the hand is now back inside the camera and the image making process, whereas what happens with Maybridge and the daguerreotype and the predecessors to photography is that essentially what happens is that the hand gets taken out with the image making process. Photograph literally means to draw, photo from photon, graph to draw with light. You just exchange lenses or two lenses for one. To me it's no shock that it goes from that pretty quickly within 50, 60 years, 65 years. You've got Picasso and Braque exploring, really before that with Cézanne, exploring the anxiety of getting binocular vision, but actually what you're creating is one conformed vision. You know, there's not a version of this from my left eye and right eye, which is how you actually see. So your brain compounds it all into one image, but you're getting two independent resources to give you that. That's where you get depth of field. It's what makes us hunters, isn't it? Binocular vision. Would we be the good artists that we are as a species? Would we have developed art as far as we have if we didn't have such high fidelity binocular vision? And a fair amount of motor control. Imposable fun. Blazers wrong. Anyway, this isn't an anthropology lecture. It's an interesting one to play with this one because there's a lot of fortuitous paint activity that happened in the original. I'm very fond of this. That layering. It's exactly how I want it to look, but there's no way I could have envisaged it being like that. I use pipettes to do a lot of my painting with. If I find one, I'll dip that in ink, fill it up, and then use that to draw and spray the paint around with, which is essentially what you're looking at. all this movement. But it's also assisted by these. I have quite a close tie with this guy, diamine inks, which are intended originally as what do they call it? Calligraphy inks. But there's such a huge variety of colour with them. I found other purposes. Okay, so I'm coming up on the half-hour mark here, so as is my cameras want to do, it'll split the file off here, so it's going to go into a second part of this now, so if you want to, in a couple of minutes this one will finish, and obviously I'll post part 2 as well, and you can watch me as I finish it off. So hopefully it'll be in the next 10-15 minutes. If you're interested in either ordering a version or if you want to get in quickly and order this version that I've just done, I'll take a photo of it. Obviously that'll be at the front head of the video, so what you see on the sort of thumbnail for this video on YouTube will be a photo of this image that I'm working on now, this very one. Yeah, they're £100 each. I'm going to standardise it because they're pretty standardised with the sizes and time that it takes. And yeah, they're all going to be slightly different because I do them all I'm reworking them by hand. But if you want to order one before Christmas, yeah, give us a shout and I'll do what I can to get them in the post. Obviously there's postage and packaging on top of that. But inside the UK I should be able to, I've got a week or so before I can, it's going to get into the too late category for getting it in the post for Christmas. But yeah, doesn't need to be for Christmas obviously. If you want to commission one of these retouched chick clay print portraits, give me a shout. And yeah, more than happy to do it once I've received the payment for it. So, but I'm going to carry on with this one into part 2 and finish it off. But if you want to get in touch with me, Instagram and Facebook are both on my profile page on YouTube here, or maybe you're watching this on either one of those platforms. So just drop me a message and I'll get back to you at the earliest opportunity I can to. And thanks for watching all the way through again to the end.